A brand new survey conducted by Robert Half shows that 85% of Canadian workers prefer the remote working option. Some are even willing to sacrifice as much as 30% pay cut to have that flexibility. And a Stanford research also suggests that people tend to work longer hours, yet feeling happier when not having to commute to the office every day. When flexibility is provided, the attrition drops by 30%. Yet most employers want to see their people back in the office at least 3 times a week. There seems to be this tension between what employers expect and what employees want. Given the broader shift in work culture in this post-pandemic world, how can employers and employees better work together to find solutions that balance the needs of the business while satisfying the desire of people? Maria, would you like to kick it off?
Thank you, Machine. So, I guess we can all agree that the changes to workplace behaviors, the way in which employees must behave, and the way in which employers must assess has certainly been disrupted far more than any times in our career. So I really believe that number one, we as leaders must practice empathy. And by empathy, I mean that every situation is different, and we can't suddenly decide or assess productivity as a template. So believing that everyone has their own situation and taking that into account when assessing their output or what their needs are from a workplace perspective or where they will best perform, I think is a responsibility we must all take on as leaders, which will effectively strengthen our relationship with our people. And certainly that contributes to retention as an employer and certainly more employee motivation, because I believe in motivating passion and love of work is really important and a responsibility of our leadership. The second thing is that, I recently attended a workplace strategies conference, and it had to do with what is the biggest impediment to people coming into the office, and it is largely the commute for most of us, and it really depends on where we are geographically. There are those that enjoy coming into the office, but many of us find that the commute can really be an impediment depending on our situations. It can be lengthy, it can be a number of drop-offs that drive how long it takes to get into the office. So I think that the issue is earning that time that people spend commuting, making work basically exciting and changing the workplace to bring people back in a way that they will feel satisfied. Taking the commute into perspective, because generally people won't want to come back if they have to be on Zoom or team calls all day, but there might be a motivation to come back to the office if in fact it's collaboration with people, it's bringing people together, it's motivating events or things that will actually draw on people's contribution in person. The other thing is we also have to acknowledge that there is always going to be a hybrid working from home and those that are working in the office. Accepting that means that we have to be empathetic of FOMO, fear of missing out. So acknowledge when we are actually in meetings or in conferences or collaborating that we include those that are at home and make sure that they are equal contributors. So I think that actually fosters a greater attitude amongst everyone, and also acknowledging that leadership accepts that their work from home is equally productive and an equal contributor.
Thank you, Maria. Very valuable points there. And Farhad, what about you at SmartONE? How are you playing the balancing act?
Pretty much any company during the past couple of years, we've been through different ways of working because of pandemic, of course. And I think the answer really is it depends. It depends on your company. It depends on what stage your company's at, and it depends on what industry you're in. And not only the company, depends on your role within the company on how effective remote work and in the office work can be. But it does seem like there's benefit to both. And I think most importantly, we need to be honest to ourselves on what are the benefits and what do you miss when you're remote or when you're in the office every day. Because if you say it's either remote, it's perfect, everything works great, that's not going to be the truth. We need to be honest about that. And for us, hybrid has definitely worked the best. The benefits of remote work are usually seen short term. Very short term, you see, yep, I saved an hour, 2 hours because I didn't have to commute. But benefits of going to the office are usually seen midterm and long term because they usually affect the innovation, they affect the relationships, they affect how people work together. And also, with going to the office, you kind of are more prepared for hard times and when things are not going well. Whereas with remote, it usually works very well when things are good and everything is going well. So that's why we have chosen hybrid. And in our system, actually, what we have done is we have left it to employees to decide how many days it should be remote and how many days it should be in the office. And the goal is, or the idea is, if you have good goals for everyone and good objectives for everyone, they can do the best to decide what the balance should be.
Yep. Thank you. And it's all about leading with transparency and trust. Great point. And Michelle, how about teachers?
Yeah, absolutely. We've gone hybrid. And I think there is immense value to having that interaction in person. The best way that I've heard it described recently is a chance to disconnect online and to get in front of each other and to really have those meaningful collisions. The 5 minutes after the meeting, the quick interactions in the hallway, but also apprenticing. I came up through management consulting, and being with people and watching people and learning from people and being trained is super valuable. And I don't think that I want to discount that. And I think Farhad's comments around short-term versus long-term. I was in a board discussion recently about what's going to happen with succession and being tapped for things in the future. Are you going to look to people that you see in the office all the time and have that relationship with? But as we move into International Women's Day next week, and the theme is embracing equity, what's the difference between sort of one size fits all in the equality space and equity and giving people what they need? And I don't want to discount that there are different situations that people need, whether they need time for childcare, elder care, and one size fits all does not work. So it's setting the frameworks and the rules that we want to follow, and then adjusting, to Maria's point, with empathy too.
Yeah. Excellent. So my takeaway from all three of you, from a leadership perspective, is empathetic leadership should never go out of style. It should not be conditional, regardless of the economic situation and the shift of power between demand and supply side of the talent. We must always lead with empathy, transparency, and trust. And also, the takeaway as an employee is that know that flexibility is also a trade-off, because there's nothing that can replace face-to-face connections from a relationship building and personal development perspectives. So Farhad, as a mature startup and fast-growing company, SmartONE seems to have many ingredients for a great culture recipe. What would you consider as a measurement of success for your organization's post-pandemic work strategy?
The strategy, I would say, has been the same. Although the way that people work has changed to some level, but the strategy for our company, at least, has been pretty much the same. And our strategy is we try to measure outcome instead of activity. And when you start measuring outcome, then you start to kind of trust people on how they think is the best way to reach that outcome. And it kind of goes back to that remote work and hybrid work as well. It's only when you start measuring outcome that you can leave it to people and say, you know what, you find the best combination for yourself. And that combination is different for every individual, depending on what outcome they want to reach. And when you're measuring outcome, again, you can completely trust people on how they're working. And that trust not only makes people happier, but it actually, we've found that it makes what they're doing more meaningful for them too, because they don't feel like they're doing something to show that something is being done. They're actually being motivated and they're being acknowledged for what they achieve at the end.
Excellent point about measuring objectives and key results versus face time and cadence. So,
Exactly.
Michelle, you've worked for many large organizations in your career. You joined Teachers just before the pandemic lockdown, and some may think that's not ideal, but you've always raved about Teachers culture as the best place to work. Why is that?
That's an awesome question. I think that it's multifaceted. I believe the organization really cares about me. I really believe that there's not just talk. They really embrace everything about DE&I. really stand behind empowerment and entrepreneurship and the focus there and experimentation. How are we going to do things better? I think there are lots of opportunities for development. They've given us wellness days. They've really leaned into, do we have the tools we need to do our jobs from home? And there's real psychological safety. And this is right from the top of the house. I feel that I can be bold and speak up, challenge the status quo, and that there won't be negative ramifications, either if I speak up and bring things up, or if I experiment and things don't work. It really is a tone from the top and how we're encouraged to lead.
Thank you. Empowerment, care, focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and providing people with that psychological safety. Very valuable points here. And Maria, as a seasoned real estate technology executive in an industry that is disrupted by the pandemic and the move to hybrid working, what is your perspective about creating a post-pandemic work strategy that will be effective?
Thank you. That is a great question. So I believe that a lot of us have been used to autocratic leadership and actually been command and control where people are in the office and you see them face to face. There is now, I think, a very exciting time for all of us to basically challenge and change and innovate, even with regards to how the organization is structured and what the expectations are of people, which then translates into, what does my workplace need to look like? What does it need to how much space do we need with regards to bringing people back, and perhaps basically designing that space to be collaborative, to enhance the collaborative experience, to improve or even introduce more collisions, as Michelle has actually referred to them as, because those are really what's going to define our workplace of the future. Honestly, is what does that workplace look like? Is it some place I feel safe, I feel healthy? It's not going to infect me. In fact, it's going to help me drive more relationships. So I think that the other thing is that the workplace is going to be a meeting place of sorts because it is hybrid. And we all don't believe that it'll ever go back to what it was, but let's use what the opportunity is for us today to enhance those relationships, to enhance what people bring back, like to basically develop this experience that the employees are going to love, but something that the employers will also value. I think it's a win-win for both, but there certainly is a focus on, what does the space need to look like? What is the space I need? What are the things I need to provide to my employees to be able to bring them back, or to make them happy, or to retain them? So I think that from a technology perspective, there certainly is a focus on the experience, on the collaboration, on the relationships, and how we foster them in the workplace and make that space inviting and something that is going to be of value for both the employer and the employee to basically derive the productivity and the passion that we need. So I do believe that, it's never been a more exciting time. I mean, there's a lot of media hype on what is the future of office, and those of us in real estate, or even those of us who are employees and wondering what that looks like. It certainly is going to really disrupt how we move forward as organizations, small, medium, or large.
Yeah, great point there. Thank you, Maria. No doubt that the commercial real estate industry has been disrupted by the pandemic, but where there's a challenge, there's also an opportunity. I think the opportunity here is embracing the change and creating new business models by leveraging the power of technology.